In this clip, we're going to learn how to work with transitions and parameters. So to start out, we have our player idling. And now what we want to do is we want to be able to click on any point in the map, and the nav mesh is going to push the player into that position, but we want our animator to recognize that the character is moving, and we want the animation to update for that. So to do this, we need to come in to our animator, and we need to create a transition from the idle to the hero's walk. You could also use the run if you like. In this case, we're going to right click on the idle animation, and you'll see that we get a menu, and we want to make a transition. So we'll left click on that, and you'll get this line. You'll need to select the clip that you want to transition to. Now once we do this, you'll see that the line is now connected, and you can move that clip around to organize it however you see fit, but this works perfectly fine. Let's go ahead and select the transition, and you'll notice that it highlights in blue, letting you know that it is selected, and then now we get to see exactly what is happening during this transition. At this point in the transition, what is going to be happening is in between this blue area. So what it's going to do is it's going to play your idle animation as it normally would. And then once the condition is met for the transition, it will start to blend between the idle animation and the walk animation. So you'll begin to see how that works. And then it goes into that animation itself. Now looking at this right off the bat, there's going to be a little bit of a problem. There's this parameter called hasExitTime. And what this means is that anytime the player inputs something to change the condition and then it needs to transition, with this checked, it means that it has to finish playing the current animation and then move into the next animation. Now the problem with that is that the idle animation could be playing, and then at this point the player clicks somewhere else on the terrain, and then this animation has to finish playing. So our nav mesh is going to begin pushing the object, but it looks like the character is still idling. But then all of a sudden it will catch up and then start to walk, and it's going to look like a delayed effect. So for us, we want this transition to be instantaneous whenever the player clicks. So we're going to uncheck hasExitTime. And so now at any time that it begins to play, it can be interrupted and move into the next animation. So now, looking at the bottom of this, you'll need some sort of condition to trigger this transition. So we need to have at least one condition, or we need to have the hasExitTime available or checked. So to create transitions, you must first create a parameter. So on the base layer, which is where we're at right now, we'll need to go to Parameters, and then we'll need to add a parameter here in the list. To do this, click on Add Parameter, and then we'll choose what data type we want to check for. In our case, we'll probably want to check to see if the velocity is greater than 0. And so we're going to be checking for the nav mesh velocity. And so that value is going to be a float value. So then we're just going to say player velocity. And then we're just going to be checking that condition to see if it's greater than 0. So in order to use this, we'll select the transition. And then with the transition selected, let's go down to our conditions and let's add a condition. Now in this case, there's only one parameter or one condition available, and so it automatically fills it in. Now you have the parameter that you must fill in, and then you need to give it the overall logic of this. And so with float values, you get the option of using greater than or less than. In our case, the float, if it's greater than 0, then we want it to transition into this walk animation. Now, there is going to come a point where the nav mesh is going to reach its destination, and then the velocity is going to become 0. And so as it stands right now, the player character would just continue to walk even though the nav mesh is stopped. And so what we would need to do is create another transition to go back to the idle when that happens. So we'll right click on the hero walk, make transition, and then we'll click on the idle. Let's go ahead and left click on that, transition there, and let's turn off has exit time. And then we're going to add the condition again, but this time we're going to say less than 0.1. And so that's just going to let us know that once the player character starts to slow down, then we're going to tell it to go back to the idle. And 0.1 might be too high of a value, but we'll go ahead and we'll test it. So now that we have this loop, we should be able to move back and forth. And let's go to the scene view and let's hit play. Now, there's going to be a problem with this, so give me just a moment. Let's go ahead and left click, and you'll notice that it's still just idling. It hasn't switched to the walking animation. So the reason for that is because we haven't actually created a script that allows us to control that. And we're going to talk about how to do that next.